When Ellen died, I lost everything. Until that dog arrived on my doorstep. A final gift from my wife. In that moment, I received some semblance of hope. And your son took that from me. Stole that from me. Killed that from me! People keep asking if I'm back, and I haven't really had an answer. But now, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
Operation. We don't need bigger knife.
Welcome to Now Playing's John Wick retrospective series.
To him, this isn't vengeance. This is justice.
Hosted by Justin.
You wanted me back. I'm back.
Jacob.
Are you here on business, sir?
Afraid so, Francis.
And Arnie.
You look good. And here I'd feared you'd left all this behind.
These podcasts contain detailed plot spoilers and harsh language.
So I guess you have a choice. You want a war? Or do you want to just give me a gun?
Listener discretion is advised.
We're not going in like the old days. Just a conversation.
Nothing's ever just a conversation with you, John.
We're killing strangers so we don't kill the ones who we love.
Today we're discussing John Wick, Chapter 4, starring Keanu Reeves, Donnie Yen, Bill Skarsgård, Lawrence Fishburne, and Ian McShane, directed by Chad Stahelski. This is Arnie, now playing co-host and your emotional support animal.
And you're now in the presence of the motherfucking king. This is Jacob.
I am Klaus. This is Justin.
Total Groot ripoff,
right?
In the middle of this movie. So welcome back to the John Wick retrospective series. It's been 4 years since John Wick 3. You know, he thought he was out, right? He went back, had a normal life, and no, he's back in again.
Come on, there's no way they could end with part 3. I rewatched that one before this, and that's got a cliffhanger just like part 2.
This series is weird, isn't it? Does it feel like it's been around for 9 years? Like, these sequels feel like they come out year after year after year, but man, 4 years since the last installment.
Yeah, I mean, Reed talked about this, I think, with Creed, too. That pandemic just messed everything up. Like, yeah, stuff that felt like it was hitting every year, and then there's this huge break. That's why I had to go back and watch 3. Like, that's the one. I remembered a great opening, a great closing. I don't remember what happened once Halle Berry entered that film.
I was the same way. I remembered 1 and 2 really well. Those were the first ones we covered when part 2 was coming out. And I'd only seen part 3 in theaters, whereas I revisited 1 and 2. But I rewatched the entire trilogy because, I mean, this really is like chapters of a book. It is a tight-knit series where one ends, the next picks up. But it was part 3 that I really couldn't remember very well, with the Elder and what Halle Berry was doing and her dogs and all of that. So that one was good to go back to. I completely forgot John Wick cut off his finger. So if I'd come into this one, all the shots of him missing a finger, I would have been like, what happened to that finger again?
I mean, the whole opening of part 4, like, would you understand that at all if you hadn't seen 3?
But yeah, it's been 4 years since we went to the theater. And yeah, like you said, there's a whole pandemic in between the last time we were in the theaters for this. So this one kind of is still at that edge of like, hey, they made this during the pandemic, and you can kind of see some of that on screen to a degree.
And speaking of victims of the pandemic, I believe in part 3, we talked about, like, there's a TV show. Like, maybe we were going to review that, and then 2020 hit.
Oh, yeah, we weren't going to review it, but I was going to have to watch it as a fan of the series. And I was kind of glad. I don't know that everything needs a TV series, and to have a continental television series, I hear it's still coming. I hear that they may still be working on it.
Yeah, I heard that we're still probably going to get it probably this year. There's another John Wick project we could talk after our review coming out. It's already been filmed, but my understanding is it's going to be 3 90-minute episodes. It's about Winston rising up to take over the Continental. It's a flashback. I don't know. Like, I've always enjoyed the world building in these films, so I'm open to more of that, like getting in deeper and getting those backstories, which they refuse to give us. They always drop the coolest things, like impossible tasks. They will never show them, I guess.
Yeah, so that's going to be a prequel series, right? Younger actors, nobody from ones we've just watched.
Yeah, apparently Mel Gibson's going to show up in it, according to IMDb, at least, if you trust that casting.
I never do, but that would be interesting. And the disappointment would be I love Ian McShane in the role of Winston. And so if you recast a younger version of that, he has a big task to live up to. As when we reviewed the Transporter series and they replaced Jason Statham and it did not work. Replacing Ian McShane might be a hard task.
Yeah, but Winston doesn't do like much running around. Get a younger version. I think it's supposed to be in the 70s. It could be fun.
Yeah, the 70s would be a great time period for it, I do admit. But I have to say, I wasn't really missing John Wick because I felt like I was still seeing John Wick.
So many ripoffs.
Yeah. Chad Stahelski and David Leitch, who co-directed the first one, Stahelski went solo on the sequels, still are coming out with so many movies. I think the most blatant ripoff I saw, and it was from David Leitch, was a movie called Nobody starring Bob Odenkirk, where he's an ex-assassin who, just like John Wick Part 1, like in his basement has a stash of weapons.
He's going after like a dog again or something, right? It's something for his daughter. I saw that one.
Yeah, it was such a ripoff. It was a good movie. Bob Odenkirk is no Keanu Reeves, though.
No, but that was the appeal. I was super excited for that one because I love his work in, Mr. Show, Breaking Bad, especially Better Call Saul. Yeah, it seemed like weird casting that might work.
Yeah, they even ripped off the poster, if I remember correctly. It was just a big headshot of Odenkirk.
All the fist around him. Yes.
Instead of all the guns around him like they did for John Wick. Exactly.
And there were more ripoffs that I think they went straight to streaming. I watched them both on Netflix. They're female-fronted ones. There was Gunpowder Milkshake starring Kieran Gillen, who plays Nebula in the MCU, in those Jumanji reboots. It was all right. Like, it felt very derivative of the John Wick universe with, all the weird mechanizations that go on with that underworld. And then there was Kate, starring Mary Elizabeth Winstead. And look, she played John McClane's daughter in Die Hard. Give her the Die Hard franchise. She is good in action. We praised her in Birds of Prey. And then Kate, maybe not the greatest film, but I really enjoyed her performance.
Really? I like her in quite a few things, maybe not the Die Hard movie, but I thought she was good in Birds of Prey. So I may have to check that one out because I do like this genre. Another one I checked out just because of the director was Bullet Train from David Leitch. I saw that trailer and I'm like, that looks like John Wick on a train from the director of John Wick with Brad Pitt and Sandra Bullock and so many other people. I can't say it ended up feeling very Wickish, but it was a lot of fun with a lot of good stunts. And like John Wick, I mean, they were fighting with water bottles and all kinds of normal items.
Yeah, it feels more like a Guy Ritchie film. I think my summary of that was Guy Ritchie in Japan on a bullet train. But Aaron Taylor Johnson, make him James Bond. He is so good in that film, so dapper in the suits he's wearing. That one was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love the fight with the big inflatable dude.
Yes.
No spoilers, guys. I haven't seen that one, but I'm with you, Jacob. I really thought that was a Guy Ritchie film. Like, just the vibe of it feels like it, but
it very much feels like it when watching it.
I mean, this series has been around so long that we even covered Atomic Blonde, and that movie feels old now, while this series doesn't.
Yeah, who remembers that one?
Right?
I remember it fondly. I've not gone back to it, but every time I'm scrolling through iTunes and like, what do I want to watch? And it's an A, I come so close to hitting play on Atomic Blonde.
Yeah, it's at the top of your library, so it's always getting your attention.
So were you guys excited for John Wick 4? Were you anticipating it? Because I have to be honest, I got a lot of stuff going on and I found myself just happy for the comfort of an action film, but by the same token, kind of coming in like, what more can they do? They've done so much.
Yeah, coming into this one, everyone, Zachary Levi from Shazam complained, like, marketing did a poor job with Shazam Fury of the Gods. That's not the only thing that was done poorly in that. But I feel like John Wick, now I don't watch television. If I'm getting ads fed to me, it's typically through YouTube, and I do watch a lot of YouTube, but maybe because this is R-rated, I didn't see a lot of trailers popping up as pre-roll ads. I watched it when it first came out, and then before I saw this movie, I'm like, that trailer made no impression on me. What am I seeing? So I watched it again. So I don't know if I was hyped up just because that trailer didn't knock me out, but I'm like, it's probably going to be a good time. Like, the action's always top notch.
That's pretty close to the way that I've now, in retrospect, feel like I've approached this whole entire franchise. Is I see John Wick's out there, I'm like, oh, geez, another John Wick. but I always end up enjoying it while I'm sitting there, right? It's a weird thing. It's like that cousin that you have out there that's like, oh man, they're coming to town. And then you go out and you're like, oh yeah, this is fun. I'm glad you came.
They're a good drinking buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see the trailer as often as like I've already seen the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 trailer or the Creed trailer, all of those before every movie I go see. I don't remember seeing John Wick a lot. But you know what I had? For John Wick Chapter 3, they started this texting service where it's like you're getting texting from those suicide girls that are in the
librarian sending out the contract notices.
Yeah, so they always send out notices every time there's a new trailer or the tickets are for sale or here's an exclusive interview with Keanu Reeves. So I kept getting texts on my phone. And I have to say, that's kind of a fun blurring of the lines to feel like I'm one of those assassins getting the specialized messages about John Wick. But, you know, not a lot of advertising. A fucking sold out IMAX screening when I went.
Wow, IMAX. Those are the expensive tickets.
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm back in Springfield for a little while. There's only one IMAX screen, but I had one choice for a seat that was not next to a stranger. I took that seat, and by the time the movie started, somebody had taken the seat next to me and brought one of their freaking blankets. Like, people, I hate it when you bring your blankets. I don't know if you have bed bugs or smallpox or what the hell you're bringing in. But don't take your blankets to a theater, especially this wasn't even a recliner theater. You're just sitting in regular theater chair.
Right, dragging your blanket on that floor.
Yeah, I've seen people do it when you can recline, but never that.
So I ended up sitting next to a stranger and hopefully didn't catch anything. I'm not even worried about COVID so much as I'm worried about parasites.
Scurvy or something, yeah.
But it was a full theater with an enthusiastic audience who were cheering and laughing. And at one point, and it was great, the entire audience, a packed theater, entirely in unison went, ooh.
Yeah, out of all the new releases for 2023, this was the most packed for me. And again, it's not always apples to apples because I go at different times on different days, but, you know, weekend, in the evening, yeah, it was a full theater. It wasn't quite sold out, but not a lot of empty seats.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you how this did around here because I went to an early showing Friday afternoon, like 1 o'clock, and, you know, smattering of people. So
because you wanted to be home by dinner time, this movie's so long.
Exactly. I looked at that runtime. I'm like, if I go to a 6 o'clock show, that's my evening, you know, but I got out of there.
Yeah, it is 2 hours and 40 minutes.
I looked at going back and I thought about going back for a second viewing, and it was, you know, looking at some of the theaters, they were pretty well packed over the weekend. So I think I did the right thing and got out of there early.
I did watch it again. I felt like I had to for this review to just really honestly separate all the action scenes in my mind because there's so much action in this to try to really differentiate. And the first time I was taking notes and concerned about smallpox, so I thought I should go back. And I didn't see it in IMAX the second time, but I did see it twice. And it's expected to do very well. It's going to certainly beat Shazam 2 in the box office.
I mean, I feel like I could put out a movie and beat Shazam 2.
It's going to over double Shazam. Shazam did around 30. This is looking at over 70 million opening weekend. Part 3 opened at 57 million. So that's a good improvement and showing that there's an appetite for John Wick. This always felt like a niche series to me. You know, I don't hear people talk about John Wick and I don't see it on social media, but I think it's a series everybody sees. Unlike Fast and Furious, there's just no memes for John Wick.
You don't mess with Keanu Reeves when you see him do this kind of action. You don't want him on your bad side for a bad meme.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, Keanu Reeves has already got his memedom. You know, he's sad Keanu and all that stuff. So let's leave John Wick out of it. But 70 million opening, man, that's let's do it again money, isn't it?
Well, it had $100 million budget, but I mean, this is certainly going to end up in the black when you look at this. Has huge international appeal too. I mean, it's not a dialogue heavy film.
Yeah, when you don't have talking, you don't need subtitles.
And when we do, they're in italics.
And half the talking in this wasn't in English.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of subtitles, even in English for this one. So Arnie, why don't you do some translation for us? Give us a plot summary.
John Wick is still a hunted man. After killing the Elder last film and surviving the gunshot fired by Continental manager Winston, the High Table has appointed the Marquis Vincent de Gramont, played by Bill Skarsgård, to see to it that Wick is killed and everyone who helped Wick is properly punished. This means punishing Winston for not successfully killing John. If you remember the end of part 3, Winston betrayed John. John wouldn't kill Winston. And then Winston shot John off the roof of the Continental, but John was scooped up and lived. And as punishment for that, the Marquis destroys the New York Continental, declares Winston excommunicado, and kills Winston's concierge, Sharon. The Marquis then calls in a specialist to kill John, John's old friend and associate Kane, a blind martial arts master played by Donnie Yen, who I can only assume is now typecast as a blind martial arts master.
I mean, only if you watch his American films. He's got a very long Hong Kong history in movies.
In America, we require he be blind.
Yes.
Rogue One and here. That's where I know Donnie Yen.
I mean, blind swordsmen are awesome, so I'm not against that choice.
John Wick seeks asylum in Osaka with his old friend Koji, who manages the Osaka Continental. However, the Marquis' Lieutenant Chidi invades the hotel. Koji is killed, but John Wick escapes. Guided by Winston, John has a chance for an out. He can challenge the Marquis to a duel. If John wins, he can be free of any obligation to the High Table. To make that challenge, John must be restored to his family of Russian assassins, the Ruska Roma. And to make that happen, John has to go on a side quest to kill somebody else, and then that mission gets accomplished, and John's brought back in the family of the Ruska Roma and challenges the Marquis to a duel with pistols at sunrise. The Marquis puts a $40 million bounty on John's head, trying to prevent John from ever making it to the duel, but John overcomes all obstacles and arrives. Also, the Marquis nominates Kane to be his fighter, so the Marquis sits on the sidelines while John and Kane have a pistol fight. Both are wounded, but John falls. The Marquis relieves Kane and takes the gun to put the final bullet in John Wick, but John had never fired his gun in the last round. He kills the Marquis, winning the duel. But John dies from his wounds, and we see Winston and the Bowery King, again played by Lawrence Fishburne, standing over John's grave, buried next to his wife, as credits roll.
And as an extra FU to everybody who just sat there for well over 3 hours with trailers and all that stuff before, there's a stinger on this one.
Yes, there is.
You wait through the credits to see that there's more to go here.
Well, that was my question going into this, and at one point I started to wonder, oh, is this the last John Wick? Are there more? Because I started to get what the tone was early on in the film and wondering if they're going to do what they end up doing. But yeah, were you aware of the place of this film in the John Wick chronology? Was there going to be more after this? Were there plans, or was there any news that this might be the last one?
I saw an interview with Chad Stahelski, and here's what he said, is it had come out that this one was going to be the last. I think, Justin, you were talking to me, and you had said you thought this was going to be the last one. And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure they're going to do a 5 and a 6. I mean, This is popular and profitable series, and yet I think early on they'd said it was the last, and then they didn't want to spoil the ending. And so what Stahelski said in this interview I saw was he's saying part 4 is the end, but he also said part 3 was the end, part 2 was the end. These are exhausting films to make, and so they say each one is the end. And then they decide, wait, I have an idea for the next one, and it's so fun hanging out with these people and making all these movies. They get back together. But I think that might be misdirection for the ending. And as you said, Jacob, part 2 and part 3 ended on cliffhangers. So I can't imagine they were serious.
Yeah, there's no way those were the end.
I mean, that would be such a dick move to just be like, part 3 made a ton of money, but we're never going to tell you what happens next.
And this one definitely feels like they have an out. We don't see the body. They got an out if they want to do a 5 with Keanu if he wants to come back.
Yeah, this one's buttoned up either way. If it's the last one, then it's satisfying. If not, they can keep going. But there was rumors out there for a while that they were filming 4 and 5 at the same time.
I heard those, yeah.
That ended up not being true.
I think that was initially the plan, but I think they did, and they put it all into this movie. Apparently, the initial cut of this film was 3 hours and 45 minutes, and they cut an hour out.
Yeah, it was about an hour longer. I kind of feel like that hour that was cut has to be from this opening stuff. We start off with the Bowery King. He's giving the speech. I feel like Lawrence Fishburne wants to do a lot more in these films than they're writing for him to do. Like, he has this epic monologue he's giving. I'm the motherfucking king. You're now in the presence of eternal pain. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, finally Lawrence Fishburne is going to be a major character. Like, the Bowery King's going to have a major role. No, he's going to play the same role he's always played. He's going to provide a gun, a suit, and that's about it. No TikTok man even. I was waiting for Jason Mantzoukas to show up.
Mantzoukas got cut. He was out there joking around, though, in the aftermath of John Wick 3. He was, like, providing a false plot summary for 4 that was like making the TikTok man the biggest part of it and becoming the next John Wick.
I mean, give us a TikTok man spinoff. There's so many spinoffs that could come from this. Do it.
But when this movie really starts, you've got the Bowery King coming in. John Wick is training, punching a post. And I don't know if this was just the IMAX screening, but my God, was that punch loud. The first time it happened, I jumped. And after punch 3, my watch buzzed. And I'm like, what's my watch buzzing for? I look.
Your heart rate?
It warned me the decibel level was too high and can harm my hearing.
Yeah, it really is a throwback to the Foley work of like Indiana Jones with those massively loud punches.
Yeah, this opening, you know, all the way up until we end up in the desert again. This to me is where it feels like COVID hit it. You know, it's sparse sets, only a couple people, socially distanced and stuff like that. And I don't know, for me, it feels like, oh, we got to hurry up and get some of this plot from the last movie out of the way. You know, John Wick is still here. I mean, we even dump his dog. That dog was the best part of 2 movies. He rescued him.
I thought he was going to get a new dog. In this one, they introduced one.
Right. So that poor dog, you know, this whole movie to me revolves around the death of a puppy. And, you know, in the last 2, he had that rescue pit bull that he hangs out with. And now he's just unceremoniously dumped. We don't even see him in this one.
Yeah, he wasn't much of a part of 3, if you recall. Like, at the end of 2, John Wick is on the run with that pit bull, and you think that's going to be a big thing. And then when they did part 3, they're like, well, what are we going to do with this pit bull? So they just gave him to the concierge to watch for most of the movie.
Yeah, they always had dogs, though. Halle Berry had dogs she loved, and we'll have a character with the dog he loves. They're keeping the theme there. Assassins love their dogs.
So the first 2 movies were pretty much contained within the local area, right? And now with 3, he starts globetrotting. He gets to Casablanca and all that stuff. And, you know, it was kind of a big deal. Like, he had to ask Angelica Houston for safe passage and help to get there. Now it's just apparently he can just hop on any commercial flight and get wherever he needs.
Yeah, we're going to cut to him riding on horseback, chasing some guys. And that was my thought. Like, there's a 3-hour, 40-minute cut of this. All that stuff's in there. Again, all the stuff that was probably cut feels like buildup. I don't even know why we're going after the elder. He's not going to get his wedding ring back. This feels like it could have been cut too if you wanted to make this shorter.
Here's my thought on this, is to show a theme. When I saw this movie the second time, a lot of the themes really were driven home for me that I missed the first time. And here, one of the things is, you know, he's going to be hunted by the Marquis. And what is said is, if you kill the Marquis, they're just going to get another Marquis. I think this is showing us you killed the elder. Well, here's just another elder. You're going to kill this elder. There'll just be yet another elder. Killing people is not a way out.
And one of the vibes I got from the trailer when I watched that is this was going to be a lot more about John thinking about his dead wife and coming to terms with that. And I definitely think they do that a little bit by the end of this. I thought it was going to be a much bigger theme. So at first, I'm like, oh, this is really important. Like, there's going to be a bunch of side quests to get that ring back. But no, that wedding ring, I don't know. It's just gone. It's been melted down or something. He's never going to get it.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm okay with, you know, getting rid of this old storyline quickly and dispensing with it. It just, visually, it felt rushed as well. You know, like we open up on him chasing some guys on horseback, dispenses of them, and then we end up back at the elder who, in the last movie, had like almost a tent city. There was tapestries and carpet and poles and, you know, and now he's sitting on a rug with a couple knickknacks around him.
Well, he's a new elder. He hasn't had time to build his kingdom yet. He just got the job, you know? You don't take the pictures of your family in on day 1.
I'll say the other thing about this chase and this quick shootout. We're going to be, I think, 30 or 40 minutes. I'm not at home, so I can't turn the clock on to see where we're at. But it felt like 30, 40 minutes before we finally get that big action scene. And 2 opened up with that great car chase, getting his car back. 3 opened up more or less with that huge, like, half-hour action scene of him being chased through the city in horseback. This one's going to take a while, and it does feel like, oh, let's get through this. I know you love all your backstory and lore, but where's that big, grabbing, opening action scene?
It's actually only about 30 minutes before the big action scene that comes, but it feels a lot longer. And
it does.
I'm taking notes, and there's so many characters introduced here. They get all their setup out of the way. When the action starts, it's going to be pretty nonstop, but we're going to have quite a bit here. In this scene with the Elder, they're really telling us how this movie is going to end, starting with what's basically the first real scene. The Elder's going to tell John, the only way John Wick will have freedom now or ever is in death. And John says, I know, because he says, I know a lot, and yeah, a lot.
I mean, that does feel like the quest of John Wick is, yeah, you kill a bunch of people, you get your freedom, but that just pisses off more people, and then you got to kill them. It's never ending.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to repeatedly just tell us, they're going to talk about his gravestone. He's going to talk about his dead wife. I feel like this movie is telegraphing. Of course, once I knew the end, I go back and I can see all the signs about how they're really setting us up that, to use the name of another movie, John dies at the end.
Yes. And that's what I'm saying. As I'm watching this, I didn't know if there was a part 5 planned or if people knew he was going to die in this. I'm like, oh, I think he's going to die though. Like, because that is throughout this film, this is the end for John Wick. And Justin, you talked about globetrotting. We're going to do a lot in this. We're going to go from Morocco, and now we're going to go back to New York. We've been a bunch, and this feels like a scene where they're really showing their cards. Like, we're going to really disrupt everything you know about John Wick. We have Clancy Brown, like always a bad guy, right? As the Harbinger coming in to fire Winston as the manager.
I love Clancy Brown. He's one of my favorite character actors. You know, he's done so much work.
Shawshank, the big one.
Mm-hmm. We reviewed him in Shawshank. We reviewed him in Pet Sematary 2. So we've done the good and the bad and the ugly with Clancy Brown. But here's the thing is, no, we're in chapter 4. I'd heard rumors this was the last one. The Harbinger comes in. Clancy Brown has gotten older. He's got this white beard.
I didn't even recognize him as Clancy Brown till later. Because, yeah, he's got that hat pulled down on his head the whole time and that beard really hiding his face.
Mm-hmm. But he puts down a token and pushes it, and he's missing his ring finger. And you know what I think is they're pulling a Lost? I'm like, this is old John Wick. Oh, my God. We're doing a flash forward, and we're going to have a story told in parallel. That is not at all what they do. I don't know why the Harbinger's missing a finger also. But I really thought they had cast this guy as old John Wick, and we were going to see him at much later, maybe still on the run or something. My mind went weird places when I saw that missing finger.
Well, you might not be too far off. Like, it's a career path, right? It's a choice that John Wick might be able to take as he climbs the corporate ladder of the table.
Yeah, if he lived, would he become the Harbinger?
Yeah.
Doesn't that seem like the other option for John Wick is to just take a seat at the table because he is so good, or become an elder or something like that?
Let me ask you this, because I think one of the fun things about John Wick has been this crazy universe they built up with hotels and gold coins and all these rules. That's a lot of fun. But then they drop like hints to backstory, the impossible task. This one, we're going to find out that everyone fighting each other used to be friends. Like, but we're never told that. And I feel like at some point, you can't just say cool backstory phrases. You got to actually flesh it out. And I was expecting that a little bit more, but that's not going to happen. So we're, again, lots of cool stuff, the Harbinger and missing fingers, but we'll never find out what it means.
But he's here to shut down the Continental, which seems to have been a plot from the last movie also, where they had the adjudicator coming in to shut down the Continental, and Winston was under investigation for letting John perform an assassination there in part 2. Still a great scene. And here they're going full out. I mean, Winston tells his concierge, evacuate the hotel, and you see why. They're going to do a demolition, like a construction worker demolition.
How do you get the permits to do this in the middle of day in downtown New York?
That's one of my notes here, is there's absolutely no authority anywhere in this movie. There's no cops, there's no firefighters, there's nothing.
I mean, there's going to be people fighting in the middle of a roundabout, a very busy one, for a very long time. They'll be fighting for the entire length of Paint It Black, and no cops will show up.
Yeah, I thought, when they did this, it looked like from the distance we were at, I thought that building was coming down, but we find out later that they just firebombed it. The building's still there.
Oh, really? I guess I missed that. I thought it was blown up.
Oh, I thought it went down.
No, they show it later.
Oh, do they? I missed that in 2 watchings.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Yeah, so we're also introduced here to the bad guy of this movie, the Marquis, Bill Skarsgård. You know, coming in, I knew the cast list of this, but I don't remember that when I'm watching the movie. So it took me a couple of seconds to recognize him without the Pennywise makeup.
How do you not recognize him? He is the most handsome looking dude that is probably also a serial killer. Like, there is something off about him, but he's a good looking guy, but like, he seems dangerous all the time.
Reboot of Dexter. Hey, we got your casting for you.
Yes.
I'm digging what they're doing with this character. It's all about every time he's introduced on screen, it's like we started his shoes and work our way up his outfit so we can see the drip he's got going on in this particular scene. He is chewing scenery.
Yeah, which is always fun. And I feel like in a John Wick movie, especially, like if there's not people being shot or beat up, I just want fun, over the top performances because that's this world. And they go hard here. Like, not just the Continental gets blown up or firebombed, whatever happened to it, but the concierge, he's going to be taken out.
Sharon, played by Lance Reddick. I was sad coming into this because Lance Reddick died at age 60 pretty suddenly. It wasn't like a prolonged illness or anything.
Yeah, they just found him dead, I guess.
Yeah, it was a sad thing with this movie coming out. I knew I'd be coming in and seeing his final role, and I didn't expect him to die on screen.
I didn't know they'd be killing him in this, though.
No, it actually kind of hurt more that they were killing him on screen because he was dead in real life. But he gets a good death, you know. They have this nice talk on the way in about, you know, basically having a noose around your neck, and he goes with Winston even though he doesn't have to, and he's the sacrificial lamb. And Skarsgård gets this great line of, he's dead and you're alive, and if you figure out why you're alive, then one of us got something out of this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it shows that we're dealing with a cold-hearted killer that is also supposedly playing by his own rules, though. I mean, in the last ones, every one of these bad guys were all following the rules of the table to some degree, right? So it was like, we at least knew what the stakes were. There was a clock on the wall, and we knew what John could and couldn't do if he wanted to be safe. This guy seems like a little bit of a loose cannon, though. It's like he knows the rules, but also we know he's going to bend them if he wants to.
I also feel in this series, they could always write their way out of a rule. Like, they say we have all these rules because we don't want to be like animals, but there's always a way to get around them to advance the plot or to add another danger or something.
True. But it seems like there's something different here with the Marquis, right? Like, he's pretending to be by the book, but at the same time, you know he's not, right? Like, I think that's what they're showing us early on.
Yeah, because his mission, it's not to kill John Wick. John Wick's kind of like Batman. It's to kill the idea of John Wick. You got to kill that idea. And so I feel like the High Table is probably giving a lot of concessions to just do whatever they have to do to get rid of this guy.
We'll never see the High Table either. You talk about all the backstories we don't see.
No!
I would love to see this High Table. If this is the last film, seeing the High Table would have been very fulfilling to me, you know, because we have this huge underground society and all of that. But no, we're not going to see that. We just see this, who is the agent. But they do a great job of setting him up as a villain. I mean, you need a powerful villain to go against John Wick after John Wick has survived 3 installments. So to come in, blow up a hotel, kill the concierge who's been around since movie 1, you instantly establish this guy as powerful. And then he brings in Donnie Yen, who's going to be even more powerful, even though he can't see. And they have the coolest subtitle in the world as he's given a card. It's in Braille saying, who do you have to kill? He moves his fingers across it. And as he moves his fingers, up comes John Wick.
What I love about that scene, because it popped in my head as he started feeling that Braille, I'm like, I want him to just stop after a couple of letters. Like, he knows, and that's what he does. Like, he only feels like half the letters and then just takes his hands off and knows it's John Wick he's going after. And we should say more location hopping. We're in Paris now at this point, where he's getting these directions from the Marquis to go after Wick.
This is where some of the lore of these movies starts to confuse me a little bit. You know, it's been a while since I've seen the other ones, but I was pretty certain that Donnie Yen had not been in any of these previous movies. But the way that they talk about him, I'm like, oh, geez, did I miss him? Like, was he one of the main guys that was with John Wick in one of these movies? Or am I just having a weird dream?
I think you're having a weird dream. We had the guy from Iron Chef as the bad guy in the last one, yelling, you know, whatever the secret ingredient is. But Donnie Yen has not shown up. And he does say they were friends. And I feel like, again, John Wick has this whole life before that first film as an assassin. That first film is him coming back into this lifestyle. So I don't know, you get someone that looks like a young Keanu and we could do a whole prequel series exploring all these characters.
And I think the part that's messing with me is in real life, it's been 9 years with this series. In movie time, I think it's only been a couple weeks since the first movie started.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was something dropped in like part 3 is it's only been a few days since he got back in it. And yeah, rewatching the entire quadrilogy so close together, I don't know how much time it took Keanu to heal. That's the one thing. When he fell off the building and was scraped off of the cement, I don't know. I imagine there were some broken bones and things. It may have been a few months there with the Bowery King, but other than that, I don't know.
Yeah.
And what's a little confusing is it feels like Kane is being hired by the Marquis or blackmailed. His daughter's in danger if he doesn't do this task. But then there's also a bounty put out on Wick too. And like the Marquis always hiring people, but then he just raises the bounty too. So I'm like, why negotiate with this guy? He's just going to put a general contract out no matter what.
But I don't think he thinks the contract will do any good. He's covering his bases. What I like about Kane here, Donnie Yen's character Kane, not to be confused with Stick, the blind martial arts master from Daredevil.
Which Donnie Yen is just basically playing.
But Kane is doing the impossible task. Remember how John Wick got out, as he was given an impossible task if he wanted to be out of the assassin life and live a life with his wife. And what we're told here is Kane has made a deal in order to live a quiet life with his daughter. And he's told a little bit later on, this will be the final of your tasks. If you can kill John Wick, you're out. You can live happily with your daughter. So we're getting, if not a flashback to what Keanu's impossible task was, at least seeing that mirrored here in Donnie Yen's second build in this movie. He's supposed to be, you know, as big as John Wick. I don't know if Kane could carry his own movie, but
Donnie Yen could carry his own movie. He's a movie star. At least in Hong Kong and China, they probably do really well.
No, I believe Yen could. I just don't know if Kane could.
I want to watch, again, like a good Snake Eyes film. We reviewed that one last year, a couple of years. I don't even remember anymore. But like, yeah, give me a good Snake Eyes film with Donnie Yen. I'm there for it. I want Kane. But more world hopping. Let's go to Japan now. This feels like a Bond movie at this point.
Yeah, I was thinking James Bond very much with all of the locations. And John Wick, you know, it's just a good practice to tip well, tip your servers, make friends with the management, because when you go to restaurants, when you go to hotels, you know, make friends with concierges, because you're going to get that extra service. And it seems like John Wick is close friends with the manager of every Continental, because remember, Halle Berry was a manager of a Continental too.
Was that a Continental in Casablanca? I didn't get that.
Yeah.
Okay. That wasn't clear to me when I rewatched it, but
he's got so many reward points.
But here's, again, another instance where Koji, who's the manager of the Osaka Continental, old friend of John Wick's, we don't know that backstory. That's why I'm thinking we're getting prequel movies. Maybe we'll get more because they just keep deepening the lore.
I don't know the actor who plays Koji.
Oh, I've seen him in a bunch of films. Yeah. Sunshine. Yeah. I recognized his face right away when I saw him.
I figured he was somebody. Let's not forget that Stahelski and Leach were the stunt coordinators of the Matrix films who brought in a lot of big martial artists. I know that they're, you know, legendary stuntmen in their own rights. And so I figured he was somebody, but I just didn't know him.
Yeah. Maybe the reason he got it in early 2000s, I think 2003, he was in a Japanese film where he played a samurai, the Twilight Samurai. Pretty good film. So yeah, he has this kind of work in his background.
Yeah, and he's there with his concierge, who also happens to be his daughter, named Akira. I have to think that's probably a reference to the anime that we reviewed.
That's how I took it. And she's against this friendship because Wick, we don't see a lot of Keanu during this first half hour, but we'll see him like hanging out. I don't know if he's on the roof of the building or what, but she does not like that he's there because she knows what the high table is going to do.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it in New York. We know that this Koji is in for it for even just talking to John Wick.
It's pretty harsh when he's like, I've known him longer than you've existed, so I'm his friend, I'm protecting him.
Right.
I love some of the lines there, like friendship means little when it's convenient and all of that. And You know, later on, it'll be like, it's sad if you think that the only measure of loyalty is a marker. The dialogue goes a long way towards me believing that these two are close.
No, I agree. I get that bond between them. But we're going to get more characters. Like, is Marquis the bad guy? Is Kane the bad guy? Is Akira going to, like, turn on Wick because of what happens? Or is the tracker / nobody, Mr. Nobody? Are they... They're like, we could rip off our films if we made them ourselves. Like Mr. Nobody, who is not Bob Odenkirk, shows up in this.
No, Shamir Anderson all right, I'll just put it out here as we're talking about him. I think this character could have been completely cut from this movie.
Totally, except I guess he brings the dog. He has an emotional support animal because it needs his emotional support. So they have a dog in this film, and I guess that's important for a John Wick movie.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting at from early on is they know they need a dog in here somewhere, and there was a dog. So, like, I don't know why we need to introduce a whole new character with a whole new dog, but we're finally getting to our first big fight scene in this movie here at the Continental.
Yeah, the Marquis men show up. They want to inspect the hotel, just like with Winston's Continental, and Koji's not up for that. I do love that. Like, he tells his men, get ready to fight, and they're busting out the bows and arrows.
Yeah, when you talk about more characters, we get yet another one in addition to the Marquis hiring Kane. And I think that should be enough. If the Marquis is the Emperor...
He's going to make a deal with nobody later. He makes deals with everyone to get Wick.
But he also has his own lieutenant there, whose name I didn't catch in the movie on 2 watchings, but I caught on Wikipedia, is Chidi. And he's the one who's actually leading the charge here. When you could have merged that character with Kane, or you could have had the Marquis doing it personally.
Or nobody.
Yeah. But you've got Chidi here as just this face of the Marquis who's going to be the one to start the fight with Koji. 30 minutes into the film, Koji brings out his assassins, and Chidi has masked men right out of the Spider-Man video game.
Yes. They did feel very... military version of Green Goblin that Willem Dafoe played in that first Spider-Man film, like those masks they were wearing.
We talked about it last time we were talking about this series, how these movies feel like a video game, right? Like, and we're finally getting to the fight sequence here, right? We start to learn some of the mechanics of what we can do with this first round of guys in suits. And then
you've done the training mission. Yeah.
Yeah. The training mission. But then, hey, right when you think you're good, nope, we get some paramilitary guys in armor showing up, and now it's time to really smash the buttons.
That was my note. Why isn't this an open world game? Maybe Cyberpunk 2077 was supposed to be that and was a huge flop because they didn't make the game. They put out a broken game. But man, I really want to play an open world John Wick game with fighting mechanics, all these fun side missions. I think I'd have a lot more fun doing that as a game than necessarily having to watch it as a film where I want the important stuff to happen.
Yeah, and the one thing I will really compliment this movie on is there's a lot of action. There's hours of action in this film, and they keep it mixed up. Like, we're going to start off, and Koji's men don't have guns. They have freaking bows and arrows.
I love that arrows going into the arms and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Chidi uses his arm to block an arrow, and you got to assume he's wearing the bulletproof suit. So if it can stop a bullet, it can probably stop an arrow, but it sticks in the arm there. And they're going to have swords.
They were always pushing it with this bulletproof suit thing. Here, it's just every time they're shooting at each other, I'm like, okay, they just want a superhero universe where they have to go to hand-to-hand combat or blades because these bullets mean nothing. They shoot lots of them, but they're always pulling those lapels over their faces so they're not killed. Which does play, we're not going to go beat by beat into this massive battle. If you thought 30 minutes was too long to get to your first action scene, good news. Like, we're going to get, this feels like another half hour of action here as they go through the Continental, like fighting wave after wave of guys. And yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun when Wick is taking on, I don't know if it's Chidi, but it's the men in suits. It's the Marquis men. And they're, always pulling those suits over their faces. And he's having to find creative ways to get those headshots.
To answer your question, I timed this on my second watching. This is a 25-minute action scene.
Okay. It feels like it, but I'm having fun.
Yeah, and Kane sits on the sidelines for a while, eating some noodles or drinking some soup or something. And when he finally gets into it, I love how they handle his blindness. Like, he's using a sword as like a stick to feel his way around. At one point, he has like Ring doorbells that he sticks up.
Yes, I love that. You see him putting these magnet type things around. I'm like, oh, those got to be motion sensors. No, they're just Ring doorbells. They're making that doorbell chime as people walk by him and he could kill them.
This is a fun scene, right? Like, I mean, like you said, we're not going to go beat by beat on the fight, but like, this is a place to maybe stop and appreciate the fight choreography, right?
Oh, for sure. If you thought you weren't in a John Wick film because there hasn't been a lot of action, this will quickly remind you.
Yeah. We get to see Kane's skill set even though he's blind.
Yeah, he's just absolutely amazing. And the other thing I really want to compliment this film on, and it starts really hitting me here, but goes throughout this film, is the set decoration. I mean, we're going to be in like what looks like a museum or a high-end collection of samurai armor and glass pieces. We're going to be in hotel lobbies with big trees. I mean, they not only keep the action mixed up, but they keep the settings mixed up enough that it continually feels fresh when they're throwing a gambit down of having so much action. Like, over half of this 2-hour, 40-minute movie is going to be action scenes. It could really start to become rote if they didn't put all this detail in.
Yeah, you don't want to see the same action from the other films, as great as it was. I feel John Wick is about inventing new types of fight scenes and new action scenes. One minor nitpick I think I have with this battle in Japan is, okay, we get this big buildup between Kane and Wick. They used to be friends. They don't want to do this, but Wick wants to, do his mission. Kane wants to save his daughter, so they're going to fight. And you have this great little moment where Wick goes through one of these panes of glass in that museum room, as I put it down in my notes, and he sees Kane like stumbling around. He can't find Wick. Wick is holding a gun. I'm like, well, why doesn't he shoot him? Oh, that gun is empty. If you look, you could see the chamber, whatever. I don't know the parts of a gun. It's cocked back to tell you it's out of bullets. Those little things, I'm like, I wish they tried a little bit harder to really test these loyalties, not just run out of bullets and then I'm going to run away.
Yeah, but I do like that Kane is there. He's like, John,
yeah,
are you dead? And then John is trying to get a gun that's near him, and just the slightest sound, and Kane knows. And Kane is also conveniently out of bullets.
Yeah.
But he's going to get John down. I mean, he gets on top of John, has that sword going right at John's neck. And then this character I can't get a beat on. 2 watchings, I don't quite understand Mr. Nobody.
I know what you're going to say. So, yes, he'll go and save John Wick a lot and then let him go even when he could get that kill shot. I think at this point, Wick is worth $20 million. That's how much the contract is for. We see him. He's got this like sketchbook/notebook that he looks at, and he's writing down like what has Wick been worth at different times, and he's trying to build that bounty back up throughout the film. And that's why he's not killing him. He keeps letting him go, so he's worth more dead later.
Yeah, he's the video game player who's going around collecting all the Easter egg points before finishing the level, right? He wants to power up and get out.
Hey, that's how I play.
Yeah, he seems on Wick's side,
yeah,
because once he saves Wick from Kane, he says, we're both in this together. But then what's going to happen is Kane is going to take him later on to meet the Marquis. And then he's like this scene made everybody in the audience wince, including me. He meets the Marquis. The Marquis stabs him through the hand and says, there's 2 kinds of men. You can pull out the knife, and that shows you're only interested in yourself, or you can pull out your hand and show commitment to the cause. And that close up on the hand as he's pulling it through the knife, oh, everybody in the audience made sounds.
Yeah, that was hard to watch. Just like eye things, just that slow withdrawal of the hand from the blade, cutting. How good of a assassin are you going to be at this point? Like, you're losing like ligaments in your trigger fingers, I think.
Right. I would be out of commission for 6 months if that happened to me. This guy's bandaged up and ready to roll.
He just bandages up and he's out there. I think the final thing before we leave Japan and get more into Mr. Nobody and making deals with the Marquis is Koji is going to be killed. Kane's going to take him out. Akira's going to see that. I do love that scene. He's like, I'll be waiting for you. Don't try to fight me now. You're not ready to fight me now, but I'll be waiting for you. I know you're going to come for me.
Wasn't that in Kill Bill where like Uma Thurman had that scene with the little girl and is like,
yes,
you're going to come and try to kill me for revenge for killing your mother?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's badass. So you rip it off and put it in.
Yeah, I think it's more badass when it's a kid you're saying it to. Like, I mean, this is a full-grown daughter, right? She's already...
No, I do love Akira's reveal. Like, she's walking around. She looks, I don't know, kind of like a geisha with that robe on. And then she takes that off and has some, like, leather bodysuit underneath it as she goes and starts kicking ass.
Right? Is she walking around with that all day long? That's got to be so sweaty.
I think so.
But John Wick is going to meet the man who shot him at the end of the last movie, thanks to a meeting arranged by the Bowery King. Wick and Winston are going to be there. This is the one scene I remembered from the trailer, was Winston saying, your way out is to challenge somebody to a duel. In the movie, I know it's the Marquis, but in the trailer, I had no idea who it was. But challenge him to a duel, and that is your way out.
Convenient, right? Like, I feel like this could have been dropped at any point.
That's what I'm saying about these rules, Justin, is they could always write a new one for the convenience of the plot.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is they could have said this 15 minutes into the first movie and skipped all of this, right? Like, oh, you're in trouble again. Why don't you just, challenge somebody at the high table to a duel and we'll end this. But no, yeah, you're right. It's convenience of the plot. And it finally gives us something to follow what John Wick is doing. Like, the first half of this movie, he's just kind of running around without any purpose, really.
Yeah, looking for sanctuary, whereas now he has a goal. He has a mission to accomplish.
And that mission's going to be super tough because if you remember in part 3, he was out of the family. He tore that ticket to be able to get to Halle Berry, which apparently he could just get to Casablanca at any point based on the beginning of this film. But he used that ticket. He's out of the family, but we got to go to another country. We got to go to Berlin, Germany, so he could get reinstated back into the family.
Yeah, here's where we get introduced to I Am Klaus.
Well, you mean the side mission?
Yeah.
That could totally be cut, except it goes on so long it comes around, and I'm glad it's in the film.
It does, but I have to say I do feel like I'm feeling the length of this movie at this point. We're only in hour 2, and I'm like, okay, this does not further his mission. This is not a personal mission. What we're going to find out is the Ruska Roma leader was killed for helping John Wick get to Casablanca.
That was Angelica Houston, I believe.
I knew Angelica Houston got killed, but I don't think it was done by this guy. So I think yet another person was killed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a new character here, Katia, who's leading the Ruska Roma now. I guess she's the head of the family. And all these characters are adopted, so I guess they're like brothers and sisters in some way.
Yeah, I think they're just orphans who were trained to be assassins, and that's their term of adoption.
She wants Wick to kill the man who killed her father, and if he does that, I guess that's how you get back in the family. It actually seems kind of like an easy thing after making such a big deal about tearing that ticket in the last one.
Yeah, but the guy he has to kill, I thought was going to be a rapper because his name's Killa. Killa Harkin.
He's got a gold grill. This scene, yeah, you could cut all this, but at least I had a lot of fun during it. This actor, this huge guy with these gold front teeth, and they're going to play a game of 5-card draw, and for reasons, nobody is there, and Kane's also there. They all want to kill him, but I guess only one wants to do that. So if nobody kills Wick, does that mean Kane's daughter is going to die? Like, I feel like that is why they're all fighting over killing him, because they all have something, whether it's money or a daughter or whatever, they all have a reason that they want to be the one to do it.
You mentioned that, Killa is this big guy, and I was like, he's sweating and he's puffing on an asthma inhaler. And I'm like, well, they really got this big guy to do this role, and he's going to be doing big martial arts later, like the Kingpin, throwing people and whatnot. And so I'm like, wow, they really found somebody of a body type who was unusual and then able to pull off all these stunts. And then I looked up this actor, Scott Adkins. That's a fat suit.
Oh, okay.
I had no idea that was a fat suit.
It looked a little comedic, but I'm like, oh, they just found a guy with a unique look. But okay, fat suit.
Oh, I don't know. I was getting big Colin Farrell penguin vibes off this guy, right? Like,
okay, so you detected it. There's something about the face that looked unnatural because it's under, all this latex.
Yep. And then later when he's lifting his leg well above his head, then I was like, oh, okay, there's something going on here.
Yes. Well, that's the funny thing. John stabs him in the neck, and I write down, oh, okay, this guy's dead. And then I'm like, why is this fight scene still going? And then he shows up. I'm like, okay, I guess he could get stabbed in the neck. Then he'll get stabbed in the neck some more.
Was he stabbed in the neck with a playing card? I saw this twice,
Yes.
and I'm pretty sure John Wick took a playing card and just gave him a really bad paper cut on the neck.
I mean, there are guys that could throw cards and make them like stick in wood and watermelon. Like, that is a talent. And I guess if John Wick killed a dude with a pencil, like a playing card is a weapon too.
A playing card is a legend that will surpass the pencil.
Yes.
Right.
But yeah, this fight just keeps going. And at one point when Killa just like stands up again, I'm like, oh, okay, like you won me over. Like, this guy is unstoppable. I love when he sits up and like takes some puffs from his asthma inhaler and then just goes back to fighting.
Yeah, this whole scene was a little bit troublesome for me. You know, I mean, first of all, they're trying to act badass with like a life or death stakes card game. And he's like, we're playing 5-card draw. It's like, that is the least gangsta. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, we're going to play Go Fish for your life. I mean, there's nothing, you know, I mean, dramatic about like, and how many you need? 2? All right, 3 for you. Great. Okay. I mean, it just kind of pulled me out of it a little bit. It's all just a setup to getting into yet another fight scene with a cool backdrop, right? I feel like we've been in a nightclub fight before, right?
Oh, yeah. We've been in a nightclub fight in 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was something fun about, again, a good soundtrack, some pumping like techno music in this club. I love that, like, for most of the scenes, people just keep dancing as this fight goes on. There's a few shots where you see people, like, scared and cowering, but I do love, like, people will just keep dancing. Just like when we get to France, people, they'll just keep driving. Doesn't matter if there's 2 dudes fighting in the middle of the roundabout.
And again, the set design here, you know, when they're playing the 5-card draw, there's the big fan blades that give it a noir feel. Everybody's got these shadows crossing their face. And then with the fight, I don't know if this club has leaky pipes or a sprinkler system going off, but there's like areas where they're getting wet.
Do they have like foam parties and that's why they have all these pipes to pump in the foam or something?
Yeah, this is the first time sitting through this movie was, you know, this is where I first noticed it's like, okay, this is a comic-y world to agree. I mean,
you've seen the last 3 films, right?
Right, but this is like, it felt more obvious here, right? Like you noticed, like you even pointed out, Jacob, people just keep dancing. It's like, I'm sorry, somebody just shot a guy in the head 14 times right next to you, and there's a dude just like, all right, watch my moves. And it's like,
yeah, don't ask about the logistics of this world. Like with the Marquis, I'm like, how did this dude make his money? How does he have like entire armies at his disposal? Like, this is crazy. And don't ask those questions. That's not the point of John Wick.
Yeah, definitely don't, because like he cringes at the idea of like going from 20 million to 25 million. Like, oh geez, I don't know, that's gonna pinch the pocketbook. It's like, give me a break. You own like castles in Paris. Like, come on.
The thing I've learned about dealing with rich people is they didn't become rich by spending their money.
Yeah.
They became rich by not spending their money. And so I honestly believe a billionaire would haggle over $5 million.
I mean, Elon didn't want to pay that dude more than $50,000 to take down his Twitter that was showing his plane. So he paid $42 billion to buy Twitter and ban him.
But this is a pretty good fight, right? Like, we get some stuff going on here. Like you said, there's water involved now, and it's, you know, neon lights and a nice soundtrack behind it. But I found myself less enthralled with the action on screen and more watching the background dancers for some reason.
I'm with you, Justin, because, again, because this wasn't John Wick's mission, and because it did feel so much like the nightclub fight in part 2, where people also just continued dancing, I felt like it just was lacking the oomph that first fight had. And I'll say one thing about movies that I never really thought about till I started reading interviews with editors and directors and things is with comedies and with action, you have to really ride a fine line because you can only stay laughing for so long. And that's why 2-hour comedies often
they don't work
as well. And with the action film here, once the action started at the 30-minute mark, I find myself getting a little bit exhausted. Like, I've been adrenalized by the fight, and at this point, I'm like tired. Like, I want a talkie scene. Fortunately, they're going to give me a couple of them next, but it's really an exhausting experience to watch this film.
Yeah, we've all said it with this side mission. It is a side quest in video game terms. It's not necessary. You could have gone like the Indiana Jones route where you build up this villain, like the guy swinging his sword all around, and then John Wick just like kills him super quick. Just like Indy just pulls out his gun and shoots the guy. Like you could have done something more comedic like that, got to the point. Wick still looks like a badass because he just walked in and killed Killa, like he was supposed to be this super tough guy to do. But yeah, I guess if this is the last one in the writers and directors' minds, they want to put everything in there.
And he already did that, though. He killed the Elder. The Elder's like, there's no point in killing me. And he's like, yeah, boom.
Yes.
So we kind of had that sudden one-shot kill just to open the film. I like the fight, though. I like Killa versus John. That was a lot of fun to me. And again, you get Kane in here, and Kane this time stops nobody from shooting Wick.
Yeah, because Kane, my interpretation at least, is Kane, if he wants to save his daughter, he has to be the one who kills him. It just can't be that John Wick dies to get out. He has to accomplish that, as we called it, the impossible task.
Kane is also conflicted, right? He doesn't want to kill John Wick, you know?
Yeah, they're friends.
Right, that's his motivation, but I feel like he is hesitating because of that as well, not just because he has to be the one to get the job done.
Though nobody does a better job at showing that, because he'll be shooting bad guys to save Wick, because, again, my reading is he wants that contract to go up before he kills him.
Right.
Well, later on, there's going to be a moment between Kane and Chidi where Chidi says, you can't shoot me. So there's some kind of rules that Kane has to abide by, I think, that nobody doesn't. Kane can't just go and start killing the Marquis men, whereas nobody is a bit more freelance and can do whatever. Nobody doesn't even have a name, let alone have people to care about that the Marquis could go after, whereas Kane has to abide by the rules because they apparently know where his daughter is, and if he doesn't do what they say, they'll kill her. But if I'm feeling tired, they're going to give me a really long pause. Winston is going to walk down this long hallway that just keeps going, and my audience watched this, and at some point we just all started to laugh at how long this tracking shot is of Winston walking in to see the Marquis.
Click, 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 click.
I guess that's one way to flex about how much real estate you own. It takes forever to get to whatever room you're in.
Right, but it almost starts to play a little bit like an Austin Powers type of comedy, right? Like,
yeah. It goes so long, like it stops being funny, and then it's funny again.
And we're going to get some more really fun dialogue between Winston and the Marquis. It's their second tete-a-tete here, and they're talking about tradition and how the old duels are really something that happens, and it's a bunch of one-upsmanship. Well, Wick can't challenge me. He doesn't have a seat at the table. Oh, Wick is back with his family now.
He got that branding on his arm. His ticket's back.
And I got a second-degree burn off my 3D printer, and that fucker hurt for days. I can't imagine how bad a branding would hurt like that.
That's what I'm saying. All these assassins, like, mutilate themselves so bad. Like, how can you still do what you need to do?
I just was wincing thinking about my poor thumb. I couldn't do anything with it for a couple of days, let alone this massive burn on your arm. Because, I mean, it's a smelting pot. It's not just like a brand. It is a smelting pot. If there's such a thing as a 4th-degree burn, he got it.
Yes.
Yeah, and the pretense of health and all that stuff is out the window here. It's like you just buy it. Because previous installments, we go to a doctor. We go to a medic, right? Just to get patched up. Now it's, you got a burn, you're missing a finger, you got your hand cut through, just deal with it. We're moving forward.
Hey, they pour some liquor on it to sterilize the wound.
Yeah, little vodka, here's all.
And I'm sure this duel is a conceit to just go after the Marquis, but I did feel like if this would have come out, if we didn't have the bad times in 2020, I know April of 2020, the gift for my daughters for Christmas in 2019 was to go in 2020 to see Hamilton, and that's a big thing about a duel. They know all about the rules of duels because of Hamilton. I do wonder if this was a nod and then just so much time had passed, like we've kind of forgotten about Hamilton now.
Aaron Burr.
Yeah, I mean, they got seconds and everything, with Winston being John's second. But explain this, maybe you can, Arnie, because you saw this twice. What is with the metal, like, Yu-Gi-Oh cards that they're flipping? They say that the Marquis gets first choice and he's going to pick weapons, but then John gets to make some decisions too. I didn't quite understand this whole little scene here where they're making the rules for the fight.
They're just like playing cards, only they're metal because that looks cool.
It's just high card wins that choice is all it is.
Yeah.
I see.
It sounded like Clancy Brown, the Harbinger, said the Marquis got to pick
first.
But then what it is he just picks something and it's the weapons.
Yeah, there's numbers on the card, so maybe if you get the higher number, that's the one that wins.
That's what it is.
Okay, because the Marquis wanted blades, which makes sense because he's going to pick Kane to stand in for him. I'm like, oh, you're going to give guns to the blind man? That doesn't seem optimal, but Wick wins that round and they get to use guns. Or dueling pistols, at least.
And also, they flip over high card to see when do you do it. And, you know, this movie could be 40 minutes shorter if John Wick won this high card. Because
now
the Marquis like at dawn. And Wick, now.
Yeah, and no quarter's going to be given, so people could still go after Wick. Here's what I thought the movie was going to be based on the trailer. I thought this is more or less where the movie would start. And then, you know, the next 2 hours would be people trying to stop Wick. That's only going to be about an hour of this film, but that was my takeaway from the trailer is that, yes, most of this film was going to be about people trying to stop Wick from getting to this duel against the Marquis.
Yeah, at this point, it almost feels like an afterthought, right? Like the time clock on the wall of like John only has so much time before, you know, in the previous movies, he was given an hour to get ahead of this, you know, now he has to survive until dawn so he can get to this thing. And it almost feels like they forgot to put this element in. And so it's like, oh, yeah, let's do this real quick at the end here. And it kind of switches gears now. Like, I feel like if we were in third gear before, we're clicking it up to fifth gear now.
And what we're in is in Paris, you know, back in Paris. This is John's first time in Paris. And again, I can't tell if it's blue screen or not, but when they're making these choices, the Eiffel Tower is in center frame behind them. And it's really using the city of Paris very well from this point on. They're going to say that the duel will be at Sacré-Cœur, and I've been to Paris once. And
you've been to Paris, so you know all these locations.
I did the touristy stuff, so I know where they've been, but I didn't get to go up on a staircase to a ledge that had a great view of the Eiffel Tower unobstructed.
Yes, great sunrise view.
And they couldn't get shooting permits for the Louvre either, apparently, because that's just completely out of the picture here.
And Notre Dame burned down, so that wasn't an option.
Oh, that would have been a great filming location, though.
What I don't understand, so John, he's going to go to that church before the battle that they're supposed to be at 6:03 a.m. That's when they need to be there, or else they automatically lose. He's going to go to that church, and he's going to have this moment with Kane, and I guess it's a touching moment, talking about daughters and wives and all of that. But then he's going to leave the church. They're bringing the pistols. You don't have to go back to the Bowery King, who's I guess expanding now, and he's in Paris as well, and get a new suit and a new gun.
But it's a cool gun.
It is. Like, there's a lot of words used to describe that gun in the movie.
It has a 21 round capacity, which in this movie is probably 500 rounds.
Nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
No muzzle flip, fast reloads. Now, I know a little bit about guns. A 2-pound trigger, you barely have to pull that. 2 pounds of force on that trigger.
Okay, that's what that means. See, to me, that seemed like a lot, but...
And then it has fangs, so it's like a bayonet. You can stab people with the gun when you're out of your 21 rounds.
Which I feel like, for all the buildup of that gun, I don't know. Did he stab anyone with it? I see lots of shooting.
No, he stabbed somebody at the very end. He finally ran out of the 21 rounds and all the clips.
I mean, it's like another hour of fighting, so it's hard to track it all.
And John is going to visit a church. I don't know which church this is. If I've toured it, it's been almost 10 years.
That's not the church they're supposed to meet at, that one he meets with Kane?
Maybe it is, because Kane is sitting there. Maybe they just went into the church that's right outside their location that they're in. But again, this is where we're going to get some foreshadowing that John will die, because it's like, do you come to say goodbye to your wife? No, I come to say hello. Do you think she can hear you? All of this. And so we get this little bit of foreshadowing. And then I don't know if you guys caught this, but I just totally geeked out. One of our very first patron exclusive reviews. The Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, have you seen The Warriors?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, this was a heavy homage, right? Like right up to the same lips and microphone almost doing the...
Yeah, the DJ playing a song, dedicating it, but it's all code about the contract going up once again for Wick. And now this gang's going after him and that gang. Total ripoff, but like that's the stuff you want to rip off because it's really good.
Yeah, and the camera angle with the African-American female lips just right by the microphone and, hey there, boppers. It was so Warriors. Yeah, that she's going to give updates the way that the DJ and Warriors gave updates as to the subway stops and the lines the Warriors were crossing. She's going to give updates as to where John Wick is. Oh, this was... is it a ripoff or an homage? I choose to think homage because I like it. If I didn't like it, I'd call it a ripoff.
Yeah, I feel like a ripoff is when you do it hoping no one notices, and I think they're being very upfront with their references here.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen Warriors, but I'm pretty sure one of the songs was Nowhere to Run, right? And that we get that here too. It's an updated version of Nowhere to Run to Nowhere to Hide. That was, on the nose, but it lets you know, like, hey, that movie's 50 years old too. So like it might bring some kids in to go back and watch that awesome movie.
And so, yeah, you get this big buildup, and you know who this is a big year for? Apparently the Rolling Stones and getting royalties for Paint It Black. We had Black Adam. Now we have this music kicks in, and it's by a French female singer, this version. This one's really hyped up. I looked into who this was because I'm like, oh, I really like this version of Paint It Black. And she did that back in the 60s, and I like that one even more. This one's a much more cinematic version. I went and bought the record of her old stuff because I like her singing so much. But yeah, you have Paint It Black kick in. You get these cars. I don't think we've had a lot of car foo at this point in this film. And now we're going to get it with Wick driving around with no doors on the car, hitting people.
This new Fast and Furious movie coming up is going to have to work hard to outdo the car chases in this. Although I do feel like both John Wick and Chidi are as invincible as Dominic Toretto because they get hit with cars
so much
hard. And again, I'll relate a personal story. I was hit by a car and I couldn't walk for a couple of days. I didn't break anything. It just fucking hurt.
Oh yeah, no, I got hit by a car too. Threw me across the road. I had to get only one stitch, thankfully, to put my eyelid back on, but jeez. Yeah, there was a lot of pain the days after that.
Let me ask you this. In both your instances, did the person who hit you stop? Because apparently that's not a thing in Paris.
Yeah, mine was a drunk driver and kept going.
Oh, jeez. In John Wick world, around the Arc de Triomphe, you don't stop. You just keep going. You got places to be.
I just thought they were all assassins. Every single one of them was trying to hit John Wick.
All those cars are circling to keep him enclosed in that area.
Driving Renaults from 1984 around
I'll say this, Justin. I haven't been through this roundabout, but when I lived in New Zealand for a while, they have huge roundabouts, especially in Auckland, the big city. And yeah, I feel like people just enter that thing and it's like vacation where you just drive in circles till you could exit.
Big Ben Parliament.
Yes. Look, kids, Big Ben.
Yeah. But I love this. If you need a shot of adrenaline, just fighting in the middle of the street, all the car stuff, well, it's going to overwhelm you. I think John Wick is meant to overwhelm your senses to get that dopamine flowing in your head and that adrenaline. And I think if you felt a bit of a lag, maybe that fight with Killer wasn't your thing. Arnie, maybe you timed this, but I feel like the next 45 minutes, an hour, it's going to be nonstop and I'm into the film the entire time.
This fight, including all of the car stuff and all of the stair stuff, runs about a half an hour.
Oh, okay. It feels like it's the entire second half of the film.
Yeah, it goes from almost the 2 hour mark to about the 2 hour, 20 minute mark. But it's just so great. And you've got nobody stalking John. And I love his phone calls with the Marquis. Again, nobody is a character that could have been totally cut. But if you're going to have him in here, he's here as some comic relief. And he calls the Marquis and the Marquis says, okay, you have a deal. He's like, it's 25 now. Oh, what? No. Okay, now it's 35. And the Marquis throws down his phone and breaks it. Then he has to call for a landline. And when nobody picks up the phone, he's like, 40 million.
Yeah, meanwhile, that contract is matching whatever he's offering nobody. So you just get more and more guys coming at them.
Well, isn't nobody getting double? Because he's like, I wanted 20 million. Plus 20 million matching for my 401k.
That's what I was wondering, because I wrote down, okay, 50 million, that's his first negotiation. And then the Marquis 20 million. I'm like, well, does that include the 20 million in the 401k too? I need to know the terms.
And hey, it looks like they established it, but you guys correct me if I'm wrong. Did they make it seem like the switchboard is actually on the Eiffel Tower? On the observation deck?
I didn't have that impression.
No? Felt like they were looking out from there too.
You know, I don't know. I didn't catch that. Because we were introduced to the switchboard back in like part 2, I just figured they were all where the switchboard operators are. I didn't even think about them being in Paris, but I guess this round of switchboard operators probably was.
Yeah, it's one thing I'm going to look for on a second viewing. And I wanted to ask you guys if you got it too, and maybe it was just my misinterpretation, but it really felt like they were establishing, yep, they're right up there on the observation deck of the Eiffel Tower somehow.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And then here we get perhaps the most memorable fight of this movie. John steals from one of the assassins after him this shotgun that has explosive, fiery rounds.
So here's the thing. Last of Us 2, if you played that game, first of all, shotgun's always my favorite weapon to use because you got that spread, easy to take out zombies or whatever. But at one point, you get the ability to make incendiary shells, which like set people on fire. And it is my favorite thing in that game. So when I saw that coming up in here, I'm like, oh, damn, things are going to get good. Like I got super excited. And then they do what they do. Like they're like, oh, yeah. Is the adrenaline not enough for you? Do we need to get super like artsy and just really impress you with some camera work? Now we're a top down like shooter. I don't know, like Smash TV. If you remember that arcade game where you're just running around from room to room shooting people, I think it's like a game show and you're getting prizes as you kill people, but it becomes a top down shooter and it is beautiful and adrenalizing and amazing. And I love this scene so much.
Yeah, I was starting to get worried that we weren't going to have a signature John Wick type of fight scene in this movie. Everything we've seen so far feels like, to a certain degree, we've seen it before. Sure, they've upped the ante and changed the background to cooler places, but we haven't got that one thing that like sticks with you yet as John Wick movies go. But I think this is it, right? A full top down, like you said, Jacob, almost feels like a video game from the 80s where it's just head and shoulders. Yeah.
Yeah. Ikari Warriors. Yeah.
Yeah, I was also thinking of Gauntlet.
Yes, there's another one. Yeah.
Valkyrie needs food badly. John Wick needs an incendiary shotgun.
And to explain this top down, if you haven't seen it, you know, I feel bad for you because we're trying to describe an action scene in words, but it's going over like the rafters and the support beams. It's like they removed the roof from this building they're in. It's like an abandoned apartment complex or something. And it's just top down going from room to room, just like you would in a video game, seeing the walls that divide the rooms, seeing the doors. I have no idea if any of this is real. The second time I watched it, I'm like, is this all CGI? Did they even film Keanu from the top down? I mean, obviously they're not having real incendiary rounds, and I doubt they built this massive set with no roof.
It's so big. And I think it was Citizen Kane that first did this kind of shot where you could see like the walls as you're going top down. And of course, other movies have done that since. Minority Report had a big scene like that where we're, you know, going through different floors and seeing like the insides of walls as we go past them. And yeah, this has got to be CGI. It's such a huge set. If this was a set, like this is an entire warehouse. I'd love to see, you know, the special effects stuff always comes out later, and I'd love to see how they did this sequence because they're shooting through walls. We've seen that, like they're hitting some of the same notes, like we're having a gunfight through a wall, but this is top down. It looks great. It's incendiary shotgun shells. People are getting set on fire. So even if they're repeating some of that stuff, it's all done in a new way, and it's so captivating.
And here, nobody lives up to his name because John gets him down. John has a gun at his head, and John could take out nobody. But John still loves dogs because at that same moment, Chidi...
He's going to shoot the dog.
Yeah, he's going to shoot nobody's dog. And John has a choice to make, and he shoots Chidi to save the dog's life.
And that's when nobody has that change of heart, I guess. He's no longer going to be going after Wick. He's going to be helping him. He's like, you saved my dog. I'm the emotional support for that dog. But I think it does go both ways with nobody. And so now... he's a good guy. Again, an unneeded character. Maybe if you want some comedy relief, unneeded, but I like what they do with him.
Yeah, to jump ahead a little bit, he is going to be the one to kill Chidi as revenge for this. And when the entire audience cracked up, it's a cheap joke, but the dog is going to pee on Chidi's body, and it got a big laugh.
That felt a little too far for me. I'm like, that's not a John Wick joke.
But the thing is, he describes the dog as a girl, but the dog lifts its leg to pee, so I don't know.
How do girl dogs pee? I figured it's all the same.
Yeah, he respects its privacy.
No, they squat.
Oh, they squat. Okay.
I guess we'll call the dog they.
But yeah, if all this isn't enough, I love this. Like John, he gets to the steps of the church. He's got 3 minutes. 122 steps, I think, is what they say.
222 is what the DJ says.
Oh, 222. Okay. I misheard it. 222 steps. But yeah, he's got to get up these steps. You know, the next Warriors gang is going to pop out, and he's like, there is no relief for John Wick.
Oh, and I'm just sitting there like, he's been hit by cars. At the end of this fight with nobody, he gets knocked out a 3rd-story window and lands hard on a van. That's when my entire audience just went, oof, because he hits that van hard. He gets back up, he gets to those steps, and I mean, just doing 222 steps on a good day when you haven't been hit by 5 cars, fallen out a window, been shot. And remember, in part 2, they said this tactical lining in your suit stops a bullet, but it's going to hurt like hell. And so apparently they don't hurt as bad anymore. They've improved the suits, but...
Oh yeah, this guy's got so many broken ribs and bones at this point.
And to do the 222 steps alone in the amount of time he has left, I thought was a challenge, let alone doing it as they go up. And then we get this like Sergio Leone moment. Like when the first guy shows up, he's going to pull his coat back and show his pistol in a holster. And the score is going to bring in...
It is Leone.
An instrument that sounds like a whistle. It sounds kind of like do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, but it's not a whistle.
Yeah, that Morricone soundtrack, they're totally replicating here.
Uh-huh. And it's a fast draw competition, but on stairs. I'm just seeing all these references, and I'm sure there's a million more references I'm not getting because I just don't have a steady diet of Hong Kong stunt films, but...
Yeah, but I appreciate it with the John Wick series because these are not necessarily about story. Like, if I try to break these down by story, I got a lot of issues with the film, but these are love letters to action films, so it makes sense to reference all this stuff. But he's going to kill everyone. He's going to finally make it. Kane shows up to help him.
Yeah, I mean, here's another moment that the entire audience went. He makes it up the stairs, and then Chidi is there and kicks him back.
Yes, I love this. He rolls all the way down.
And these stairs have like landings. So you think he might go down 10 steps and stop on the landing? No. Now, I'll continue telling stories of my personal injuries. I've fallen down a flight of stairs.
Ooh, that's got to be painful. It's almost happened to me. I've slipped but caught myself.
Arnie Wick today, man.
I hit a step wrong and it was and then I hit the bottom landing so hard and broke a table.
Oh.
It was painful, and a plant on the table landed on me. It was just a scene.
The vase hits your head and crack, and you had birds going around your head.
And that was it for the day, right, Arnie? You didn't like go back up the stairs and like do other tasks. That was it. You were done for the day.
He had a duel to get to, Justin.
Let alone get knocked down landing after landing, and he gets knocked down about halfway, and you're like, okay, only halfway. And then he gets knocked down the rest of the way. And that's when Kane shows up, and Kane is like, I'm going to help you get to this, because I think it's a thing of mutual respect as well as Kane needs the kill. I think Kane just doesn't want to see John Wick be on the run for not making the deadline. If John's going to have this duel, he should get to the duel.
And I thought there had been some off-screen discussion, maybe with Winston and Kane or John and Kane. Like, they had a plan to get the marquee. I totally expect this movie to go there. And while all this action is happening, we get one cut to Kane, who's like eating at a cafe and sticks a pencil in his pocket. I'm like, oh, he's gonna like slip that to John at some point. He's gonna kill the marquee with that, because that's such a big deal, killing someone with a pencil. And it's kind of unceremoniously just gets used on these steps. Like, he just stabs someone. Maybe it's Chidi in the hand with it. And that's it for the pencil. I thought with that setup, it was going to be a bigger deal.
Yeah, that's when Chidi says, you can't shoot me. He's like, no, but I can hit you, motherfucker. And spits on him. And the thing is, the first time I watched it, I missed Kane taking the pencil. But I just went with him having a pencil in his pocket. And the second time, I'm like, there's where he got the pencil from. Okay. But this is the climax to me. You know, we're still going to have the duel, which is the emotional climax. But this is, if you come to John Wick for stunt spectaculars, and who doesn't? If you're coming to John Wick, that's what you want. This is going to be the last. And it is impressive. It's a half an hour. And even though I'm exhausted, I actually found myself holding my breath during the second trip up those stairs and the fight versus Chidi. At one point, I realized I had stopped breathing and I needed to like exhale and inhale. That's how into this movie it got me.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about death in this film. Earlier, we get talks about epitaphs on graves. The concierge is just friend. John says he wants his to be John, loving husband. But I never think he's going to die before he gets to that duel. Maybe once he gets to the duel. But for me, that does not take away even having that kind of meta knowledge. Like, no, he's got to get to this duel. Like, it doesn't take away any of the adrenaline, any of the fun of this huge, massive battle, starting with the cars all the way up the steps to get there.
Yeah. And, you know, the runtime of this movie, you're starting to feel it. But at this point, it's almost feels purposeful, right? Like, I feel at this point like I've been through this with this character. And I feel like if I had to walk up these stairs right now, I wouldn't be able to do it just from watching the movie. So I feel like it has pulled us in, you know? It does feel like we need to come to a crescendo at this point.
Yeah, and he gets there just as the sun rises, and Clancy Brown is there, and they're going to have their duel with these ancient-looking pistols. I thought we'd get more gun fu. I thought if you're having a duel, it would be, you know, you start back to back, but then you start running around, you do your gun flips and things.
No, they called this out like 30 paces when they were setting up the rules, and they'd get closer and closer each round if no one died.
And it bothers me because the way they edited it, they don't take 30 steps. Like my OCD, I'm counting the number of steps they take.
Me too.
And then when they come back in 10 steps, I counted John Wick only took 8. I'm like, no.
They got to cut some stuff out, Arnie. They can't show every step.
But what a great way to resolve all of this, right? It's such a violent, up-close, personal series. What better way to end it than with a gentlemanly shootout, right?
Yeah, that's the irony, I think, is we've had all this grotesque violence. And again, going back to Hamilton and the idea of duels, just something, you know, it's from a different era, but that's how gentlemen resolve their disputes.
Which is why nobody believes it anymore, is because the high table hasn't done this in so long. It was from a different era. And kudos to Stahelski and the writers for coming up with this, you know, coming up with an intimate ending instead of just feeling like you have to top everything you've done before. Because in so many movies, that fight up the stairs would lead to a boss battle that would also be big, and then the movie would be done. And here, it's going to be quieter and yet have so much emotion to it that I applaud their ingenuity for coming up with this.
Yeah, and we all know how movies work, so I'm trying to figure this out, because I'm like, there's no way John Wick is going to get shot by Kane. There's no way Wick is going to shoot Kane. Like, what is their way to get around there? But then they start shooting each other, like they're taking wounds. They're getting hit in the shoulder. Wick takes a really bad gut shot. So even though I know, you know, the good guys always got to win, like, how are they going to pull this off? Because they've built this relationship. Maybe not the best. I would like to have a flashback if you're going to have this intimate ending between Kane and Wick and why they are such good friends. I mean, Kane even says at one point his eyes weren't taken, like he gave them up. Like, I wanted something more. They always drop these cool little hints and Easter eggs about backstories. I wish it was a little bit more intimate, but I guess what I'm saying, even though I kind of have expectations of where this is going to go, I'm still in suspense because it's such a great conceit. Is like, yeah, this will get me peace, but I got to kill my friend to do it because the Marquis is able to have someone else stand in for him.
Yeah, I didn't know how this would go because you're not going to kill John Wick on the first round, and John Wick is not going to lose, is what's in my mind. I didn't think even the first time that he would die, but I knew he wouldn't lose. But just shooting Kane in a one-on-one duel where you only have one shot per pace didn't feel like enough. You know, Kane's not the bad guy, the Marquis is the bad guy. So how is this going to play out? I didn't know, but it's that gut shot you mentioned that knocks John Wick down, and the Marquis is just so excited that they mention to him, I believe it's Chidi who says to him, if you are the one who kills John Wick, you will be of legend. And so the Marquis really wants that kill shot himself.
Yeah, they're 10 paces away, or maybe 8 paces since she did the counting at this point. And the Marquis takes over to, make that final shot, which, okay, like at this point, I get what you're doing. My question for you, Arnie, because you saw this twice, Do they cheat here? Do we hear 2 gunshots? Do we only hear 1? I don't know if you picked it up. Knowing about it now, I'd really pay attention to that scene because Wick gets shot in the gut. We think he's shot his bullet as well, but he hasn't. And that's how he's able to kill the Marquis, because he still gets 1 more shot.
Maybe it's because it was the IMAX screen and everything was pounding my ears so goddamn hard that my phone was still warning me a couple more times that I'm going to go deaf. But I only heard 1 gunshot that first time. And when he went down, I was like, John didn't even fire. Is it because he won't hurt Kane? Why didn't John fire? And then, yes, Winston is just going to call out the Marquis as such an idiot for not noticing that John never fired his gun. But I even caught that on the first round as John, I thought he didn't have a chance to fire his gun, that Kane was just faster and got him in a bad place.
Yeah, I was in my notes like, okay, shoulder shot, hit the ribs or something with Kane. Like I was trying to track all the shots and I noticed like, yeah, John takes that gut shot, but I don't think we ever see if Kane got a 3rd wound, which he wouldn't have because that bullet wasn't fired.
The only thing that kind of bothered me a little bit about that was, and it might be an edit thing, but we see John on the ground and he has dropped the gun, and it's more than just reach over and pick it up away from him. Like he's going to have to roll a little bit to pick up that gun to fire.
My other concern is, if he hadn't fired, doesn't the Marquis need to go back 20 paces? Is this a technicality? Do they have to redo the shootout because the Marquis is 10 paces closer?
The Marquis claims the coup de grace, which is, you know, the final end, which I just know from playing games that were in French. But I think it's just he gets the kill shot. And because that meant he was still in the duel, because, yeah, what it is they should be at 0 paces. They were at 10 paces. They should be at 0 paces. And John still had a bullet, whereas the Marquis thought, I'm just going to shoot you because you can't walk any further. And yeah, the gun doesn't appear to be in your hand, as Justin said. And then, but it's such a gratifying headshot with all the blood coming out the back. I mean, they really put into Bill Skarsgård's explosive head wound here.
And John is maybe dead. We don't yeah, he's going to have this moment on the steps as he's quote unquote dying, but then we're going to cut to that headstone next to his wife, and Winston and the Bowery King are there kind of saying their goodbyes, but they did this with Nick Fury. We saw a headstone for him too, and he's still alive.
I should have known. I'm kicking myself for not knowing when they're on the way to the duel and John tells the Bowery King and Winston, I want my headstone to say loving husband. I should have known at that moment that John would die at the end. And I'm so mad at myself for missing it on the first watching. But here he's there with loving husband and right next to the tombstone of his wife that says loving wife. And you know what? Keanu's getting older and there's only so many ways you can perform gun fu. And I'd rather see this series go out on top and not just have a bad installment that ends on a cliffhanger and they decide they don't want to come back. This felt like full circle. And you know, if you want to think like this, he's with his wife again. And as Justin said, not a whole lot of time has passed since she died. She died. He got a puppy almost immediately after. And then all the first 3 movies happened in a couple of weeks. And so he didn't have to suffer that long. He's back with his wife and they're next to each other for eternity or until a building gets built on top of the graveyard. So...
And then he comes back in like John Wick Poltergeist? Ghost doing gung fu? I want to see it.
So, Justin, Jacob, do you recommend John Wick Chapter 4? Justin.
So, Arnie, you just pretty much summed it up for me right there. Is this movie puts a great button on this series, right? And same concerns you had. We're all getting older. Can Keanu keep doing this? Do I want him to keep doing this? Well, for me personally, my answer is no. So my recommend to this movie is going to be contingent on that this is the last John Wick movie, right? If they resurrect this for a John Wick 5, show us he wasn't really dead and create some new problem for him to get over, I feel like I'm off that train at this point, you know? But I can't judge a movie for what hasn't happened yet. So we have to talk about this movie. And my only ding of it is the runtime. I feel like it gets slow in a few parts and it kind of hurts the rewatchability. I feel like the other ones you could pop on and watch and not feel the runtime. Here, it feels like a commitment, right? If you're going to sit down and watch this movie, you're in it for 3 hours. That's what you're doing that day. So outside of that, I don't have many complaints. I think the filmmakers knew what they were doing. They know their character and they knew how to write an end for him. So my hope is that this is where they leave it and they can mess around with prequels or whatever. But this is where the story for John Wick should end. And that's where it ends for me. So high recommend for this one. Let's hope this is where the train stops.
Jacob.
I think I've been the most critical of the series. I maybe notoriously gave this series its one red arrow at John Wick 2. I want to say, before I saw this fourth installment, I went back to chapter 3 because that's the one I remembered the least. And I recommended that one. I really enjoyed that one. But watching that one, it made me realize this is about the action scenes, because that film, great opening. And then once Halle Berry shows up and we go on a bunch of side quests, I kind of lose interest into that film until the ending, which has a great climax as well. So I want to say this, because it kind of clicked. Okay, this is what John Wick is. Don't get caught up in the story, because this is a video game. This is about little side quests, and then you go on your main mission. So I want to say, even before I saw this one, I was gonna tell John Wick 2, you have fulfilled your marker. I'm breaking it. I'm releasing you from it. I will give that film a green arrow, because I realized this series, it had a whole storyline. I don't know if this is all planned ahead of time, but it found a place to go with this crazy action and this crazy universe they built up. And that's just how it goes. Sometimes you don't like a side quest in a video game, but you have to do it because you have to get that thing to beat a boss later. So I do want to say, a strong action series. I'm going to recommend all of them, including John Wick 4. I'll have to go back and watch that first one. This may be my favorite one, even though, this kind of dawdles at times. It's a very long film. But I think thanks to the pandemic, I've kind of found an appreciation for longer films. I feel like I complain about runtimes a lot, but like that Doom remake, really enjoyed that. RRR, 3-hour film. I watched that 3 times last year. Like Babylon, I know you don't like that, Arnie, but I kind of love that film. Oh, and that was 3 hours long. I know you do. I kind of really enjoyed it. So what I'm saying is I've changed. Maybe because stuck at home, we're watching a lot of movies at home. I just got patience for longer films. And this one, it's so adrenalized. The plot really doesn't matter. It is about that action, about the car chases, about that great top-down shooter scene. I think if you're a fan of the John Wick series, if this is the last John Wick story, because there's more stuff coming out, we'll talk about it. But if this is the last Keanu Reeves John Wick centered, not prequel story, this is a strong note to go out on. I don't think fans will be disappointed. Strong recommend.
You guys said it. I mean, this is an action series that I have greatly enjoyed, and this one lives up to it. What does a John Wick movie have to do to get a recommend from me?
Kill a bunch of people?
It has to impress the hell out of me with an action scene. And this did. And it came up on the Now Playing Podcast Facebook page. Why isn't there an Oscar category for best stunt work?
Isn't there an MTV Movie Award for that? They got Best Kiss and all that.
But retroactively go back and give an Oscar to every John Wick movie for the best stunt work of the year, because so much of this is practical stunt work and hardworking stuntmen. And I feel it. It just feels visceral in that way, with the exception of the top-down scene, which I just loved the visuals of, but it didn't feel as much impact with each hit as I do with the close-up gun fu stuff. So that's what a John Wick movie has to do to get me a recommend. Now, to get a higher recommend, it has to give me some good story and some good world building and some things like that, and a little bit of humor. That very first John Wick and the second one too, where there is an actual cop and he's like, "You working again, John?" And John just walks away, or all the scenes with John Leguizamo and all of that. I just felt like there was humor in those. And this movie lives up to it. Now, if I'm going to rank them, I'm probably going to rank them maybe 1, 4, 3, 2. Maybe 1, 4, 2, 3. 2 and 3 feel about the same in my mind. But part 1, you can just watch part 1. It's a self-contained dog revenge story, and it doesn't feel like there needs to be anything beyond it. But when they went beyond it, they brought great stunts, great humor. And so this is a really solid recommend. I'm not as high on it as Jacob, and I think part of it is I got tired. Now, I'm not opposed to a runtime. Avengers Endgame is a 3-hour movie. And that movie, when I say a movie is too long, then Avengers Endgame comes up with the meme, your argument is invalid, because Avengers Endgame is one I have watched so many times and it never feels too long. And so it goes back, I think Roger Ebert said, no good movie is too long, no bad movie is too short. And so here, it felt a little long. So it can't be like...
So it's a little bad?
It's got some places where it dragged, like Justin said, but it's still so worth seeing, and I really want to see what Leach does next. He's impressed me with all of these Wick films. For a series I came in just hearing good things about, to coming out the other side going, you know what? You've done a well-contained story here, 4 chapters, but I'm kind of with Justin. I don't need to have John Wick Chapter 5 or John Wick the epilogue.
But I think we're going to be back next year now. I guess we're not going to do the Continental. That's supposed to come out this year. But there's a movie, and from what I read, it's already filmed and done. It's a spin-off. Hey, you remember that ballerina that was dancing in front of Angelica Houston in part 3?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to get the ballerina. Apparently, she has some side quest story. It's going to be like John Wick 3.5. It takes place between 3 and 4. Maybe she's going to get revenge for Angelica Houston getting killed, but the ballerina is supposed to come out.
That movie came out last year, wasn't it? Black Widow?
Or Red Sparrow? I don't know. If it's the John Wick group in charge of it, look, seeing a ballerina like spin around on her toes kicking dudes, that could be fun.
Yeah, but I'm looking at it and I don't have high hopes for the ballerina. It is being directed by Len Wiseman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Man, we have reviewed many, many times. Mostly he's done the Underworld series.
Yeah.
Plus Die Hard 4 and the remake of Total Recall.
So nothing good. That's a bummer. I did not know that part. But before next year, we're going to be getting to some other new stuff.
Yeah, we're going back to another old retrospective series, much older than our John Wick 1 review. Remember, Jacob, when we had to spend like 2 months watching Children of the Corn?
Oh, yeah. Something that I wish was a victim of the pandemic. I guess it came out in one theater in Florida or something, but yeah, Children of the Corn reboot or new film. I don't know what it is. I don't want to know what it is, but I'm going to have to.
It came out in theaters, more than one theater. Stuart went and saw it in theaters.
He saw this theatrically before because it got re-released in theaters, supposedly like the same week as Creed 3.
Yes, he went that week. While we were seeing Creed 3, he went to see Children of the Corn.
He did not go to the original theatrical run of Children of the Corn then.
No, it was shown in Australia too.
Is that where it was shown? Okay.
Australia and like one place in Florida, I heard. But it is now available widely on Shudder, the streaming service for horror fans. And so we are going to be back next week taking another bite out of Children of the Corn, yet another adaptation of Stephen King's short story. This is the 3rd time that they've told the origin of the Children of the Corn.
Okay, so this is a full reboot.
Yeah, and you know, like every reboot, they've gender flipped it. It looks like instead of Isaac, we're going to have a female child leading them.
I don't know the female form of Isaac.
And in between, on Friday, the weather is improving, even up here in Illinois, where the weather sucks compared to where I usually am. It's getting to be nice out. It's getting to rain a lot. That means spring is here, and with it comes our Spring-Summer 2023 donation series, and it's a throwback.
Yeah, forget about Shark Week. What about Shark Spring Donation season? That's how long this is going.
12 years ago, Brock, Stewart, and I reviewed the Jaws films and the Deep Blue Sea films for donors. We're kind of going back to that. Starting this Friday, we're reviewing another sea monster series.
It's a Jaws ripoff, at least that first one that I've seen.
Piranha. And let's keep in mind, the first one directed by Joe Gremlins Dante. The second one directed by James Avatar Cameron.
The first time he went the way of water, but only for a couple days is my understanding.
And then there's a TV reboot from the 90s, and then Piranha 3D, and the best title in cinematic history,
yes,
Piranha 3 Double D.
The only reason I wanted to see that movie was because of that title.
So that is our silver level donation for a donation of $10 or more through PayPal, on Podbean, or on Patreon. the monthly donations through Podbean and Patreon, or $10 to us through PayPal. If you do $25 or more, the gold level, as Jacob indicated, we're going to have 7 Shark Weeks.
Just to let our listeners know, this one's kind of like our summer of 89 or sci-fi of 86. Some of these have sequels. We're not doing all the sequels, though.
No, what Stuart refers to this as is the best shark movies of the past 20 years, of the new millennium. So there's Open Water. We'll talk about the sequels in that review, but it's just a review of the original Open Water. Then The Reef. Again, we're just reviewing the original, but as we do, like with House or
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah, those movies, good callbacks, Jacob. I was struggling a little. We'll talk about the sequels in the original one, but we're not going to do full reviews. Then we're doing a one-off of The Shallows, and then some movies we will be doing sequels to, 47 Meters Down, 1 and 2. And then this is all building up to The Meg 2, coming out late this summer. We'll be reviewing The Meg Part 1 and Part 2.
The biggest shark.
Yeah, so a whole lot of fish-eating people for our donors at the silver and gold level.
And Platinum, though, the Shark Week's over. Going a different direction.
For Platinum, The Expendables 4 is coming out. And so you're going to get 4 movies for the Platinum level of $35 or more through a PayPal donation.
It'll be fun to hear what actors are so expendable they just stop showing up for the sequels.
As I understand, most of them stopped showing up for Part 4, and it's a Jason Statham film.
Oh, I don't even know about Part 4, but yeah. Mickey Rourke, he's out after 1.
I was going to say, it sounds like Statham is the linchpin in this donation series.
Yeah, that's true. He is the star of The Meg as well.
So that is our donation drive. It is starting this Friday. So we hope you can support our show, and the shows we do every Tuesday, the totally free Tuesdays, are 100% dependent upon donors like you who support our show and get all of these bonus podcasts. And there are going to be a couple higher levels. Indiana Jones is being pulled out of the vault because Indiana Jones 5.
He's got to crank that dial of destiny.
The quest for a good ending to the series. That's coming out. And Evil Dead got pushed, so Evil Dead is still available at a higher level. So you can find all the details at nowplayingpodcast.com/donate. So thank you in advance for your support of our show. Thank you to everyone who's ever supported Now Playing and allowed us to do this show that we all have such a passion for and so much enjoyment doing. We'll be back next week with Children of the Corn as I talk about passion. Until next time, no more guns, John. No more bullets.
John Wick, excommunicado in effect in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Now Playing's John Wick Retrospective Series. We hope you've enjoyed the show.
Well played, old friend.
For more movie review podcasts, visit the NowPlayingPodcast.com archives. There you'll find hundreds of film reviews including Die Hard, the Jason Bourne series, Constantine, Kingsman, Machete, the Marvel Comics movies, and more. And come back each week for another new movie review.
You got out once. You dipped so much as a pinky back into this pond. You may well find something reaches out and drags you back into its depths.
Now Playing relies on listener support to keep operating.
Let's go to the vault.
We have released over 150 donation podcasts through our Podbean page. Available there are series like The Matrix, the Quentin Tarantino films, Planet of the Apes, Jurassic Park, Aliens, and much more. Links to our Podbean page are available from NowPlayingPodcast.com.
I need to go help.
After this, we are less than even.
You can also join our Podbean crowdfunding campaign to help our show grow. Patrons of $10 or more get a new exclusive movie review every month, plus even more perks, including one where you can pick a movie for our host to review. Find the details on our website.
You have no idea what's coming to you.
Also at nowplayingpodcast.com/book, you can order Now Playing's film review collection, Underrated Movies We Recommend. This book has 125 reviews about films you probably haven't seen, but you should.
Oh, and remember, you owe me. You don't want me owing you.
You can also follow Now Playing on Facebook and Twitter. There, the hosts post new episode announcements, movie reviews, and contests where you can win movies and soundtracks.
Tell me, Mr. Wick, is this a formal event or a social affair?
Social.
You can also help out Now Playing by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. A link to Now Playing's iTunes listing can be found at nowplayingpodcast.com.
I'll try and do the same.
Now Playing's John Wick series is produced and edited by Arnie Carvalho.
Sometimes you gotta cut 'em, mother.
Associate produced by Jason Latham.
You do realize that I'm management now, right? So I don't go around shooting people in the head.
Now Playing's John Wick series credit narration by Brock.
Shall I announce you?
Yes, please.
The John Wick films and all the audio and music used in this show are the property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.
Mr. Wick broke the rules. Do you understand the repercussions if he survives?
The opinions expressed on Now Playing are those of the individual hosts and may not reflect the opinion of Venganza Media Incorporated.
What he said.
Enough.
Now Playing is a Venganza Media production, copyright 2023, and no part of this show may be reproduced, repurposed, or redistributed without the written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated.
You done, Viggo?
We're done.
You working again, John? John just walks away, or all the scenes with who's the guy who was in The Happening and Super Mario Brothers? John Leguizamo?
Okay. I'm like, what is that Venn diagram?
I thought by naming those two movies, it would make
I don't even remember him in The Happening. And I'm like, are you talking about like Chris Pratt? Are you doing the new Super Mario Brothers or the old one? I'm like, Bob Hoskins was not in this film.
Tu Wong Fu, come on, who is it?